So Sam Burns, pretty darn impressive, isn't he? Really hits it long and straight. And right after this, let's see what we can learn and put into our games by watching and analyzing his. Stay tuned. Hey, this is Steve with HitItLonger.com. I continue on my journey to hit the ball longer and straighter from tee to green, and sometimes that means sneaking a peek at someone on the PGA Tour, one of the best in the world, who's really hot, and seeing how he's doing it. Maybe we can garner a couple of ideas or moves and put them into our game, and that might help us too. So the first thing I see when I watch Sam Burns swing in slow motion is I would categorize him kind of as a late releaser. And what I mean by that, you can see coming into the ball here, he keeps the right wrist in extension longer like this, and the right elbow in flexion longer than some other players do. And he also has the left wrist bowed this way, so it gives the club a little bit of a closed look coming into the ball, which is really actually more square to the arc, but he's holding this for quite a while. He really turns his body out of the way to get the handle to go left, and that just brings the club in really square, and then he starts to straighten it out, the wrist and elbow here, and brings it around really square to the arc and on its way back around to the inside again. Now, let's look at that from the face-on angle. There's that right wrist, right elbow. So he's kind of releasing a little later. Left wrist is bowed like this. And the effect that that's having is to create more forward lean at impact. So it looks like this, and he releases it like that. So the effect it has is more forward lean. Therefore, you would think that he would get a bit of a lower flight out of it. Now, for the average person at home, just holding that wrist and elbow like this longer, it's a big trap for you to fall into. You think you need forward lean, compress the shot more, make more divots in front rather than behind. Sure, those are all things that a lot of the average guy lacks and is going for, but doing this all by itself is not going to get you there. Remember what he's doing in conjunction with this is that he has got a big lateral shift and he's rotating way out in front of impact. He's very open this way at impact. Now, you're not going to get there just from the holding of the wrist and elbow and releasing that later, like holding the angle, but you've got to combine that with this shifting and turning of the body if you're going to get the strikes and the good compression that he's getting. Now, Sam looks like a real big, tall, athletic kid, and that by itself is getting him enough power. So he's hitting the ball about 308 yards average so far this year. So he's hitting it with plenty of power. But what I really like is how he keeps the club face so beautifully square to the arc through the impact zone. This is where you can't necessarily teach someone to be big and athletic. You can teach yourself to get faster, but learning how to control the club face and make the club face be so square to the arc it's traveling on is definitely something we want to study more and try to get into our game. So again, you'll see this in slow-mo from the down the line angle, both iron and driver. You're seeing this club face so square to the arc coming in, and it's probably the least amount of rotation of anyone that you'll see from here to here. So that's what you're really looking for. And why do we want that? Well, number one, it makes it statistically more likely, the greater percentage chance that we're going to really nail one straight. But even more importantly, when we make an error in club face and our timing is off, the size of the error becomes so much milder. And for a lot of golfers out there, it's not hitting more good shots. It's going to get your score down. It's hitting less loose shots that cause bogeys, double bogeys, triple bogeys, penalty shots, getting yourself in trouble, high stress rounds, less fairways and greens, that kind of thing. So getting your club face to behave this way is so important. Now you see how he's doing this is through pretty much mostly maintenance of the butt line. Now the iron swing you're seeing I'm putting on the screen, it's not quite from the butt line. The camera is not there. The camera is more kind of out in front of his toes. So when you see the camera line here, it's going to appear that the hips move off this line behind slightly. It's just the camera angle that's fooling you. Now, he's definitely not a backwards mover like you might see with some other golfers like a Dustin Johnson or others. He might be moving off maybe 1 inch, but there's no question that he turns a lot from a pretty good posture and gets that handle moving. So he's pretty shallow in the slot here. He's not the most shallow ever, but he's shallow enough in the slot. And so if you're not here, if you're coming in more vertical like this, that's the first thing that you'd want to start working on. So it's coming into it shallow from the inside, and then that handle turns the corner. So I'll get that bowed wrist like he has. Now that handle is really turning the corner here, and that is really what brings that head around to get squared up nicely. And then he doesn't have to turn the shaft at all. He can come through, and look at that face right there, kind of pointing back at the camera. So that club shaft exits kind of at the height of the left elbow here, and the face is kind of pointing more back at the camera, where the average guy that I teach who struggles with direction, let's say a better golfer who struggles with blocks and hooks, looks a lot more this way and then this way. So you can see the face twisted there and the club shaft coming out between the shoulder and the ear. I had a couple lessons that look like that today. And again, those golfers have a harder time with the push and the big hook shot. So you want to keep working on the staying against, butt back against the imaginary chair, rotating around that, and getting the handle to work left so that you don't have to introduce that spinning shaft into the equation. That can be timed. There are golfers who time a little bit of that, like a Rory McIlroy or a Justin Thomas. They have some of the best hands in the history of golf, and they're able to time it well enough. But for us average mortals, it definitely makes things a little trickier to be more consistent on a day-to-day basis. So I do recommend doing it more like Sam's doing it. Now you can see the same thing he's doing on the driver, where that face looks absolutely beautiful, the way it comes in so square to the arc. He probably swings a couple degrees out to in, and maybe a degree or so upwards is what my guess would be. So he does play a little bit of a cut shot, but it's so minute. If you were actually watching him there at a tournament, you would just say he hits the ball dead straight. But again, you can see the club coming out on his exit. The club face is kind of pointing at the camera while the club shaft comes out about almost elbow level. So well below the left shoulder when it exits out and reappears to the camera again. So the bottom line is this, that you're looking for a golf swing that will make the club face track square to the arc right at the flag or right at the middle of the fairway, and try to veer off of that as little as possible, while at the same time you're trying to maximize the speed at which you swing through it. Not always maxing out the speed. You'd like to have your potential for max speed to be super high, but then you can control the appropriate amount of speed and power necessary for every shot while staying on this beautiful face to path square arc. Hey, I love studying swings that make the ball go long and straight consistently. I hope you enjoyed this too. If you got some benefit, I hope you'll hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. I'm Steve. Thanks so much for watching. And as usual, hey, I'll either see you in the next video or I'll see you longer and straighter down the fairway. Everybody take good care.